I live in a 17th century house, one without central heating, and it's been so cold recently that I've been suffering with chilblains, and I haven't had those since I was a child. And it made me think about the Tudors and their cures for things like chilblains. Hot skin of mouse applied. Don't think I'll try it. But let me take you back in time. Let's go back a few hundred years to Tudor times. Imagine waking one morning in Tudor England with a pounding headache, a fever, and a throat so sore that you can barely swallow. There's no paracetamol in the cupboard, no antibiotics, no health advice line to ring, no pharmacy brimming with cold relief products, no local health clinic. Instead, you live in a world where illness is not something that happens to the body, but something that happens within it. A world in which health is a matter of balance, of harmony, of the right mixture of forces inside you. And in that world, the question is not, what virus do I have, or which bacteria is causing this? The question is, which part of me is out of balance? Modern culture loves to portray Tudor medicine as ridiculous. We snigger at the thought of leeches and bloodletting. We recoil at remedies involving pigeons or dead animals and congratulate ourselves on how far we've come. But if we stop there, we miss something far more interesting, because Tudor medicine was not random. It wasn't thoughtless. It wasn't simply superstition dressed up. It was actually a coherent, centuries-old system for understanding the human body and its relationship to the world. It had its own internal logic, its own rules, and its own form of evidence, observation, experience, and tradition. And once you step inside that world, Tudor medicine begins to make sense. Not in the way that modern medicine makes sense, but in the way that their world made sense. To understand it, we have to stop thinking in terms of germs, pathogens, and prescriptions. And we have to enter a world in which the human body is not a machine, but it's actually a living landscape. It's shaped by the seasons, by emotions, diet, age, environment, and even the stars. A world in which illness is not an enemy to be fought, but a signal that something within you has tipped out of balance. The four humours. Blood, hot and wet. Phlegm, cold and wet. Yellow bile, hot and dry. And black bile, cold and dry. Each humour corresponded not just to an element, but to a season, a stage of life, and a personality. Blood was linked to spring, warmth, passion, and childhood. Yellow bile belonged to summer, heat, anger, and youth. Black bile was associated with autumn, heaviness, and adulthood. And phlegm ruled winter, coldness, melancholy, and old age. In that period, you weren't simply born with a body, you were born with a temperament. Some people were naturally sanguine, warm, energetic, optimistic, full of blood. Others were choleric, fiery, quick-tempered, driven by yellow bile. Some were melancholic, thoughtful, heavy-minded, governed by black bile. And others were phlegmatic, slow, calm, cold, and moist. To Tudor minds, this explained why people were different, why some were lively and others more solemn, why some were quick to anger and others slow to move, why children seemed warm and energetic and the elderly cold and sluggish. And illness in this system was not an invasion, it was imbalance. A cold wasn't caused by a virus, it was caused by phlegm becoming too dominant, by cold and wet overpowering the body. A fever wasn't an infection, it was excess heat and blood. Mental disturbance might be explained by an overheated brain or by black bile clouding the mind. And the task of medicine at this time was simple in theory: to restore balance, not destroy a disease, not attack an enemy, but to return the body to harmony. Everything that followed, every herb, every treatment, every purge and plaster, flowed from that simple principle. Because once you accepted that illness is imbalance, treatment becomes an act of counterweight. Cold is treated with heat, wet is treated with dry, excess is relieved by removal. A chest heavy with phlegm, you need something hot and dry. A person's mind disturbed, you need to have your head shaved so that cool air can reach the scalp and calm the brain. A body burning with fever, you must cool it. A system clogged with excess, you must let something out. And this is why herbs mattered so deeply. Plants weren't just plants, they were carriers of qualities. Each herb was classified by its nature, hot or cold, wet or dry, and matched to the condition it was meant to treat. Mustard, for example, was considered hot and fiery. It burnt the tongue, it warmed the body, so it was used for chest complaints and colds, conditions caused by excess phlegm. That cold and wet humour. The cold wasn't killed, it was countered. The body was nudged back towards balance. And this logic extended beyond herbs. Food mattered, environment mattered, temperature mattered. A patient might be wrapped in blankets or placed in a cool room. They might be fed warming broths or cooling drinks. They might be purged with laxatives, made to vomit with emetics, or encouraged to pass water with diuretics. Every intervention had the same aim: to rebalance the body. And sometimes that meant removing what was thought to be in excess. Which brings us to one of the most famous and infamous practices of Tudor medicine: bloodletting. To modern eyes, it looks barbaric, but to Tudor eyes, it was perfectly logical. Blood was hot and wet. Too much of it could cause fever, headaches, agitation, even madness. So blood was let. And this could be done in several ways. A vein might be opened with a blade, or cupping might be used, a heated cup placed on the skin, raising a blister that could then be sliced. Or leeches might be applied, quietly drawing blood away. And this wasn't random cruelty, it was controlled release, a rebalancing. And it wasn't done thoughtlessly. Texts advised when to bleed, where on the body to do it, and how much blood should be taken. And this brings us to another crucial part of Tudor medicine: the stars. In the Tudor world, the human body wasn't sealed off from the universe. It was part of it. The same forces that governed tides, seasons, and harvests also governed flesh and bone. Astrology wasn't a fringe belief, a superstition. It was embedded in medicine. Each sign of the zodiac was thought to rule a different part of the body. Aries governed the head and eyes, Taurus the throat and neck, Gemini the arms and lungs, Cancer the chest and stomach, Leo the heart and spine, Virgo the digestive system, Libra the kidneys and skin, Scorpio the reproductive organs, Sagittarius the hips and thighs, Capricorn the knees and bones, Aquarius the ankles and circulation, and Pisces the feet. A physician might consider a patient's star sign. They might consult the heavens before bleeding a vein. They might time the administration of a herb according to planetary influence. Because a remedy given at the wrong moment might fail, not because it was ineffective, but because the universe was out of alignment. This was a world in which the body, the earth, and the cosmos were in conversation, and medicine was an act of harmony. When a Tudor man, woman, or child fell ill, there was no single obvious place to turn. There was no national health service, no local doctor's surgery, no clear boundary between medicine and home life. Instead, care existed on a spectrum. At one end were the university-trained physicians, Learned men who spoke Latin, studied ancient authorities like Galen and Hippocrates, and advised the wealthy. They diagnosed, prescribed, and theorised, but they rarely touched the patient. Then there were surgeons, practical men who dealt with wounds, broken bones, abscesses, and injuries. They set limbs, they lanced boils, and amputated when necessary. Surgery was a craft closer to barbering than scholarship. Then there were apothecaries who prepared remedies. They ground herbs, mixed potions, brewed syrups, and sold medicines over the counter. But for most people, most of the time, healing happened at home. It happened in kitchens and gardens, in pantries and herb beds, in the hands of mothers, wives, neighbours, and the village wise woman. Households kept receipt or recipe books, not just for food, but for medicine. These books recorded cures for coughs, fevers, wounds, headaches, childbirth, melancholy. They were handed down, copied, adapted, and trusted. Knowledge grew from experience. It was built on what had worked before. A woman who had delivered many babies knew what eased labour. A neighbour who'd survived a fever knew what brought relief. A village healer knew which plants soothed pain and which stopped bleeding. This wasn't ignorance, it was practical medicine in a world without laboratories. And when illness struck, it wasn't just a physical event. It was a disruption to life, labour and identity. To be ill in Tudor England was often to be afraid, because many ailments we shrug off today could be deadly. A tooth abscess, a cut that became infected, a childhood fever, a sore throat that closed the airway, a winter chill that settled on the lungs, an ear infection. Without antibiotics, without anaesthetic, without germ theory, the body was fragile, and people knew it. An illness meant lost income. It could mean hunger, dependence, and it meant the very real possibility of death. And Tudor people were not passive in the face of this vulnerability. They acted, they observed, they experimented, they recorded, and they believed their bodies could be guided back into balance. So when a child cried through the night with sore gums, something was done. When a neighbour wasted away with fever, remedies were tried. When a labour stalled, women gathered, whispered advice, passed cups, rubbed backs, remembered what had helped before. Medicine wasn't remote, it was intimate, it was domestic, and it was woven into everyday life. And this is where Tudor medicine becomes most vulnerable to our laughter. Because when we turn the page in a book of Tudor remedies, we no longer see theories or philosophies, we see ingredients, things to swallow, things to rub on the skin, things that sound to us completely mad. And it's easy to stop there, to fixate on that oddness and to congratulate ourselves how far we've come. But if we do that, we miss what actually matters, because every remedy, however strange, however represents someone trying to do something to act against discomfort and illness. The parent easing a child's pain, a household fighting infection. And as I've said, these remedies were not random. They were not chosen at random. They were based on the theory of medicine at the time. And they were remembered and passed down because in someone's experience, they had helped. And some of them, astonishingly, still do. That story of the strangest Tudor cures and the ones that actually worked deserves an episode of its own. So do watch out for part 2. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining me. I do love sharing my work with you. Please do subscribe and hit that bell to make sure you never miss one of my videos. And to receive extras like resources linked to my videos, live streams, Zoom chats, and a magazine, check out my channel memberships. I'd love to have you as one of my members to enjoy even more Tudor history bliss. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.